CMLC is transforming Calgary. We started in East Village with a master plan, a bold vision, and then we built Riverwalk. Then we added bridges to an island and created a beach. Homes, 1,500 of them, with more to come. Art everywhere. And that library. A living, breathing neighborhood came to life in East Village. But CMLC was just getting started. We're bringing the culture and entertainment district to Calgary. We built the West's biggest convention center, transforming Olympic Plaza, reimagining Workland Center, and expanding into transit-oriented communities. Since 2007, CMLC's brought together architects, engineers, planners, families, artists, sports fans, musicians, volunteers, partners, builders, and visionaries. Brighter weekends, vibrant neighborhoods, stronger communities, and you. CMLC, trust and transformation together.
Hi, everybody. That video works even better when you're sitting in the library, when you see it. Thank you for joining us today for Placemakers Community Building for Growing Calgary. My name is Claire Lepan. I'm the Vice President of Communications and Strategic Partnerships for the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, and I'm so pleased to welcome you here today. Before we begin, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that our work in the Rivers District is located at the confluence of the Bow and the Elbow Rivers in a place called Mokinstis, a Blackfoot word that means elbow. It is in the spirit of truth, respect, and reciprocity that we honor and acknowledge Mokinstis and recognize the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, including the Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai nations, the Iarhe Nakota, including the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney nations, and the Tsuut'ina Nation. The City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. So today is the 16th installment of CMLC's Placemakers series. What started as an idea in our office 10 years ago formed into an ongoing speaker series to highlight the people, the projects, and the places that are being shaped in CMLC's communities and in Calgary as a whole. And it's been an opportunity to welcome the partners, minds, and collaborations that have helped deliver projects like what we're sitting in today and future projects to come. Today, we're thrilled to be here at the Central Library in East Village to talk about an incredibly important topic, community building and housing development, one that is a prevalent conversation in Calgary and continues to guide our work at CMLC moving forward. On behalf of CMLC, my colleagues, our members of the board, members of City Council, and executive leadership team from the City of Calgary, thank you for being here today and joining in this conversation with us. Today, you'll hear from Reid Hendry, the City of Calgary's Chief Housing Officer, about Calgary's growing demand for housing and the city's strategy to respond to that demand. You'll hear from Kate Thompson, CMLC's President and CEO, about CMLC's ongoing community building engagement work in East Village, the emerging culture and entertainment district, and our expanded mandate into transit-oriented communities along the Red Line to support the municipal housing strategy. I'm also thrilled to have two members from our partnership and development group to join us for a panel discussion that we'll have later this evening. Joining Kate and Reid, we have Tony Trutina, the Chief Operating Officer for Truman, and David White, Principal and Founder of CivicWorks. Let me first start by welcoming Reid. Reid is a lifelong Calgarian, a land development leader with over 15 years' experience of managing large-scale projects across Calgary and Edmonton. He holds an MBA from Heriot-Watt University and a Bachelor of Science from U of A. Reid, as you'll hear in his presentation, is a passionate advocate for housing. He's committed to leading bold, innovative solutions across Calgary's housing crisis. And in his role as housing officer, he focuses on increasing the diversity and supply of market and non-market housing, unlocking land and opportunities for capital development across the housing spectrum, and fostering collaboration with both public and private sectors. With a leadership approach that balances strategic action with a multi-perspective dialogue, he is dedicated to making a tangible impact in Calgary and by leading the Home is Here strategy. Please join me in welcoming Reid.
Hello. You guys ever send a bio in and then have to live up to it? Evening. I hope everyone's doing well. As mentioned, my name is Reid Hendry, and I'm the Chief Housing Officer at the City of Calgary. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to speak with you all today about the state of housing in Calgary. Before jumping into my presentation, little involvement from you guys, if you don't mind. Can I get a quick show of hands, those in the room? Could you raise your hand if you own a home? All right. Could you raise your hand if you rent? Okay. And then just kind of a question. So whether you are a renter or you're an owner, who would like their housing-related bills, things like mortgage, utilities, property tax, et cetera, to decrease? Show of hands. All right, perfect. And I got some laughs, so that's good. Thank you for those. And that's really the point of this, right? In this presentation that you're about to see, I'm going to talk about a couple ways that we are working to do exactly that, right? We're working to decrease housing-related bills. So it's split into kind of three high-level portions. First, I'm going to talk about some data and really just level set the room. Next, I'm going to talk about housing successes that we've had. And then lastly, I'm going to close on some bigger, more macro city building and CMLC-focused pieces. So, as mentioned, for the grounding, the data you see in front of you is from a 2023 housing needs assessment that the city undertook. It identified that at least 1 in 5 households in Calgary cannot afford their housing-related bills. The housing price-to-income ratio is 5.5 to 1. For context, we like that number to be 3 to 1. We want 30% of somebody's income to go to housing-related bills. Right now, we're at 5.5 to 1. And importantly, only 35% of Calgarians believe that they have housing access that meets their needs. So what are we at the city doing about this? We implemented a strategy. This strategy was approved in September of 2023. It began implementation in January of 2024. It is called The Home is Here. And what you see on the screen is the 5 broad outcomes. These outcomes contain 98 individual action items. We've called out one there on the screen because it's very relevant for today. That one is actually action item number 1 in the strategy. They're not ordered by preference, but maybe for tonight they're ordered by preference. And really what it speaks to is how we are taking strides and making genuine effort to really attack the housing market from all angles to ensure we're delivering affordability for all Calgarians. In the near term, what does that actually mean, right? If you're a Calgarian, what are we doing? What it is it's nearly, or actually over, $1 billion in investment from 2024 to 2027. Strategies are great, but flexibility within those strategies are immensely important. So we are always continuing to monitor the strategy. Since its implementation in January of 2024, we have a new federal government that has a new vision for what they'd like to see. We have a new municipal government who has a vision for what they'd like to see. And we have an ever-evolving macroeconomic environment that we are trying to adapt to because there's quite a few things outside of a municipal level of control. So what are the successes? What have we done? We're starting here kind of just really focused on non-market. For those who may not be familiar with the term, you're going to hear me say like affordable housing. You're going to hear non-market housing. For absolute clarity, affordable housing is speaking to that 30% of income, right? Non-market housing is something that the private market cannot provide, either because it's deeply subsidized rents, or it requires a lot of high acuity wraparound services, things like that. So we have a large portion of the strategy, and recently we've had some really exciting progress on this. 17 non-market land sales to date. We have our Housing Capital Initiative Fund, our Indigenous Housing Program, Matu Mitapi Okio Ipiaya. And importantly, we're leading in the world when it comes to office to residential conversions. We're doing that for non-market homes as well in the downtown. Homes located near amenities, near transit, that allow people to both work in the community, such as downtown, and live in that same community. We also have a wide variety of market level approaches. Huge, huge steps, like 6,000 secondary suites. To put that into context, the City of Calgary over the last decade or so has averaged 12 to 13,000 annual housing units. That's what we deliver, right? We are now at a point where we're delivering 6,000 secondary suites. So about 50% of our historic enabling of home delivery is now being represented in something like secondary suites as we continue to ramp up, as you'll see in some later slides. We're leading in office conversions, as I mentioned, and then importantly relevant to today, we are activating transit-oriented community developments with $20 million in seed funding and looking to invest more across the various stations that CMLC has in their portfolio. Importantly on this, I often get asked a question, right? Like, what do you do? What is the chief housing officer? In one sentence, it is to enable supply, choice, and affordability. What works for one isn't going to work for all. And importantly, if you can enable that supply and enable that choice, the market will act efficiently and you will get a more affordable outcome for Calgarians. So we do that through a variety of mechanisms. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of rezoning for housing. That's its technical name, blanket rezoning. Pretty popular in the recent municipal election, pretty popular at executive committee today. But we're doing other things as well, right? That is one action in the 98 of the strategy. We're removing DPs. We are exempting from DPs in the downtown area. We're taking meaningful steps to cut that red tape so we can enable more homes for Calgarians. And where it's got us is we now lead the country. We like to say Calgary is Canada's housing engine. We're delivering more housing on an absolute basis than any other city in Canada. That's huge when you think of it in context of Toronto being 4 times the size of us. Montreal being much larger, Vancouver metro area being much larger. I really like this slide because it speaks to the enabling of what we've been able to do. So to translate it, you can see our year over year kind of parabolic curve, how we've gone up. But importantly, we haven't gone up just in multifamily, or we haven't gone up just in secondary suites like that yellow one at the very top there. We have seen an increase in every single product type, and then of course, a massive overall increase in the amount of homes we're able to deliver. This is from a recent CMHC report that identified both Calgary and Edmonton, Calgary shown here in kind of the purplish blue, as the best city at delivering missing middle typologies, which many of you in this room are likely familiar with as being kind of that crucial middle ground that allows businesses to thrive and allows communities to grow in a very beautiful way. As I talked about earlier, one sentence, supply, choice, affordability. This is where it gets us to. It's a really powerful chart for a couple reasons. One, if you look at the inflection, we kind of see 2020, you see COVID, you see immigration policy at a federal level changed. I'm sure some of you may remember, and maybe it's the reason you're here in this room today, Alberta is calling. And my God, did Canada answer? Okay, they showed up. We had massive immigration into this city, and it caused a huge spike in our housing prices. Since that time, since the implementation of the strategy, you can kind of see we're now on a bit of a decline. There's certainly other factors at play, like federal immigration policies being reduced and curtailed, but a lot of this is because of what we do. If there's one thing I want you all to take away from this presentation, and it's a reason why I'm hanging on this slide, is to commit it to memory. When you leave this room, you're going to hear a lot of things about the prices are now 5% cheaper, buy now, right? You can now write inspection conditions into your housing purchases. Wow, buy now. The market's fixed. There is no housing crisis. Think of this chart and think of that stat on the right-hand side, that since 2020, the composite median home price is still over 40% higher than what it was in 2020. And although we don't show it here for simplicity, I want to be clear, the rental graph looks identical to this. So zooming out a bit, we got really into the details there. What is the city doing, right, around community building? Our role is to enable it through a variety of policies. We just talked about the Home is Here in quite a bit of detail, but there's much bigger plans. The Municipal Development Plan, the Calgary Transportation Plan, which soon in Q2 of this year, or of next year, pardon me, we'll be looking at the Calgary Plan, the modernization of our Municipal Development Plan. We focus on engaging with Calgarians, really developing local area plans and documents and policies with them in the room and enabling those conversations so we can get a great outcome for everybody involved. And then importantly, collaborating with our partners. We collaborate a lot with groups like CMLC and others along this journey. On that note, CMLC is an amazing partner for us in transit-oriented communities, where we have given $20 million in Kickstart funding. And some of you may be aware, there's been 3 sites on the red line that have been identified for Fish Creek Lacombe Station, Dalhousie, and Anderson. I want to kind of finish up on a couple last slides here, that we often get a question around our growth in established areas. We often have a question of, is this community ready? Can it handle it? We're putting too much pressure on the infrastructure. We're putting too much expectations on the roadways, on the toilets, on the parks. And it's important to keep this in mind, that this is natural for a neighborhood, right? What was farmland becomes where young families move to, those young families grow. I would ask all of you to reflect and see where you're at in this journey with your own housing accommodations currently and in your own personal life story. For somebody like me, I live in a community that was farmland 30 years ago. My parents' home used to have 5 people in it, me and my 2 brothers and them, and now it's just the 2 of them. Right, their community is a little bit further along. As it begins to lose population, it loses schools, it loses retail, it loses commercial, it loses amenities, it loses vibrancy, until we can begin on that regeneration path. Using some real numbers, and this is a fun one, there's some peak populations up there. We talk about the infrastructure can't handle this. I'm going to out myself here. It's public in some articles. I was born in 1991. Okay, so I'm 34, check that math, and every single one of these communities that you see listed, which were kind of strategically chosen as being around Anderson Station, they hit their peak population before I was even born. So when we ask ourselves questions of, can the roads handle it? Can the toilets handle it? Can a treatment plant handle it? One, they certainly can, because we've seen these decreases in population as per that neighborhood cycle that we now need to rejuvenate, right? And 2, we at the city take this very seriously. Every application that comes through, we are reviewing those applications for its impacts on our transportation network, on our sewage network, on our stormwater infrastructure, so on and so forth. Technology has gotten much more modern today, right? A toilet flush 30 years ago would be 13 liters, give or take. A toilet flush today, as per our water bylaw, I believe is 4.8 liters. So when you say, how can we incorporate, 8 toilets instead of 2? Well, those 8 toilets are 40, 50% more efficient than their predecessors. At a macro level, Calgary has an amazing advantage. As mentioned in the intro, I'm born and raised here. I'm a big believer in this city. And I think pretty much, unless you're like somebody that has to have sashimi every night or go swimming in the ocean every day, there's no better place than Calgary. You have mountains, you have world-class amenities, world-class tourist destinations just an hour outside of town and within this town. You have income tax advantages, lower tax burdens. I think we are going to continue to see the city of Calgary thrive and grow. And we need to be there to meet that growth, enable that growth in a way that brings community into the room, brings our partners into the room, and that is why I'm here today in my role to work with all of you and everybody outside this room on getting that job done. And with that, my communicator, who I do see out there, she was like, cell phone number on a slide, you sure? But I do encourage you, if you have any questions, if you have any ideas, that is my genuine work cell phone number, not my personal one. That is my work cell phone number. But feel free to reach out and genuinely continue this conversation. I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
All right, let's keep Reid's phone number up the whole time. Thank you, Reid, and we look forward to continuing, that discussion and much of what Reid touched on when we get into the panel a little later on. I'm now very pleased to welcome Kate Thompson, our President and CEO at CMLC. Under Kate's leadership, CMLC is leading the master plan delivery for East Village, the Culture and Entertainment District, alongside our partners at the Calgary Stampede. And now, as you've heard from Reid, our portfolio at looking at opportunities along the red line through transit-oriented community development, which is in response to the city's housing strategy, which you'll hear from Kate in a few moments. We've also had the good fortune and continue to lead over $1 billion of projects in the downtown, including the recently completed BMO Centre expansion, the 17th Ave extension and Victoria Park Stampede Station rebuild, and now we're very excited with the now under construction and forthcoming Workland Centre, formerly Arts Commons, and the Olympic Plaza transformation projects, among others. Kate is a fellow of the Royal Architect Institute of Canada, and her unwavering dedication to work, not just to work, but maybe that, to work and to design has changed the identity of the city for the better, and she'll speak to that today.
I do have a lot of dedication for work, but I have a life too outside of this. And you're not getting my cell phone number. A lot of you already have it. But so great to see so many people. I always think when I get a chance to talk about what we do, as long as everyone in this crowd knows it's just not me. There's a group of amazing 40 people in our staff, an incredible board, our shareholder, city council. So I get the privilege of being here at the podium, but I get to represent some fantastic people. So if you see anyone with a CMLC name tag, say thank you to them or ask for their cell phone number maybe. Okay, so by the numbers, I'm going to talk a little bit about CMLC because some of you may not have context about what that acronym means or when we were created or what we do. And then I'm going to talk about some of the projects and the areas we've worked on. And then at the end, I'll talk about some of the transit-oriented community areas that we're looking to go into. And then we'll do the panel. So just by the numbers, like I said, the people with the name tags, 40 of them scattered around that are incredible combination of every kind of background. But we have the great privilege of being able to work on some of the projects that Claire talked about, from the convention center to this project that took 5 years of my life and many people in our office's lives. But I think the interesting metric there is that over 20 partners. Yeah, there's a lot of other numbers out there, but you'll see a cowboy hat, I think, in the background somewhere. We don't do anything alone. I think that's true for almost every business, but definitely for city building. It requires partnership to be able to attract the private investment necessary to build a city. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our strategic priorities. Really being future-focused city building is, we have 4 priorities, and they're all fairly simple when you boil them down, and they shouldn't be anything than what they are. But really, our main number 1 is to attract private investment. How do we remove barriers in any communities that we work on that somebody in private industry would be willing to say, I'm going to put my hard-earned money, and we believe in this. We think this is a neighborhood that we want to invest in. That's a big part of it. And to do that, we need community building leadership, making sure that we're making choices and investments that attract investment. Really important for us. And to do that, we need to be innovative, and we need to constantly understand what's out there, what is the priority, what do we see as precedent. A lot of our work, we're not resting on our laurels. If someone out there is doing something really interesting, we want to know about it, we want to learn about it, and we want to bring it to Calgary and have it start and be a Calgary story as well. And to do all of that, we need to execute in an excellent way and make sure that's top of mind. And it seems really like a small bullet point, project execution excellence, but it's fundamental to everything we do. And what's really interesting about the work we get to do, and I'm looking at some of our team, is that each project we get to work on, you learn more about our community and our city and our partners, and through their lens of how they deliver their work, we get to deliver some pretty amazing projects. We are many hats. City building is not built over years or months. It is really decades-long process, and the focus has to be laser focused on quality and great decisions, and very quick decisions, like what is the right thing, and it evolves and it changes, just like our master plans have to be kind of a really good baseline, but evolve with the market. And this next slide, I think we've gone through back and forth. We were created in 2007 as a wholly owned subsidiary of the City of Calgary, and we've gone through different iterations, but I think this idea of us being a strategic ally, so Reid talked about it in his presentation, which gives you kind of the good fundamental understanding of what we do, is we're a link. We are a wholly owned sub. We work on behalf of the shareholder, but we are able to deliver work that removes barriers and collaborates with private industry as well. So whether that's oversight and partnerships or creating communities out of something that has struggled to create a community over time, really making sure that we're utilizing, amplifying with the city. All of the city's goals are our shared goals, and how do we do it with complex projects. We joke that we'd love to do a really easy project, make it simple, like not building over a train that we're standing in right now, or not, adding on to a convention center that was put together with many years. It's like a really simple project, but that's actually not what we're made for. CMLC is made for the complex projects that are kind of at the intersection of public and private, and how can we remove barriers? Is there a way that the work that we do can make it easier to get to the final goal line, to receive, kind of complete a project? And I think our role in that sometimes is very, forward-facing, and then sometimes it's actually as a quarterback, just understanding what all of our partners need and then delivering it. So where do we work? As Claire said at the top, we work at the intersection of the Elbow and the Bow River, and that area is defined by this big red lasso around the Rivers District, the 2 rivers, and that's a 504-acre area. And again, started in 2007. But our primary focus was, how do we build out East Village? It had been a decades-long question of how we could revitalize East Village, and many of you in this room probably had a hand in making that happen, and we were able to build off of that momentum and focus most of our effort on that first 49 acres for the first 10 years, let's say. And then starting in about 2017, we started to shift focus and look at and expand our focus to the Culture and Entertainment District. Along with Calgary Stampede, this is a completely different area, even though a neighborhood that's abutting each other with East Village, a completely different mix of uses, of scale, and also the greatest outdoor show on earth. So within one area, and you can see, I think this slide shows the potential. There wasn't much happening on the east side of downtown. So how do you get the density that is downtown? How do you have it inform what is this asset between these 2 rivers? And what can we do with that? So that was kind of the lens that CMLC, that was the challenge put to us in 2007 that we've been working on ever since. So when we look at market observations. Reid did a great job. I'm not going to try to repeat. He does an excellent job of looking at data, but looking at where we are today. As Reid said, we're in a historic population growth in Calgary. We are, Canada and beyond has answered, the Alberta is calling. We had over 250 Calgarians move to Calgary last year every day. That requires housing. That requires a lot more than just housing. But we're at that intersection and becoming really a gateway for newcomers. When you look at the relative affordability, so Reid's absolutely right in terms of the percentage of your median income versus your housing. But when you look at it in relative terms, Calgary still does hold an affordability advantage compared to our other larger Canadian counterparts. And what do we do with that advantage, and how do we build to address that? But it's not easy. I think every developer in the room would know that they've been scouring pro formas, looking at the opportunities to cut costs and still deliver what needs to be delivered. How do you deal with the cost of concrete, and where do you go from there? So we have, our numbers are down from 2024 in terms of resale. And a part of that is also the market conditions really challenging with our interest rates and pricing. And then, but we are seeing opportunity. A lot of developers are talking and looking at what is the scale. And when we started in East Village, for example, scale of our master plan kind of describes a mid-rise development, but the time where projects were starting to be constructed in 2013-14, we started to see a lot of point towers with podiums. We are looking at that in terms of market viability, and market is actually looking at what is a 4 to 6 story wood frame, and how do we build that out? How do you build out communities given our market conditions in Calgary? So what does that look like for East Village and Culture and Entertainment District? So in East Village, we actually have 6 mixed-use projects in the regulatory process right now, totaling about 900 units, and 1 hotel development within that, and at least 3 of those moving into construction starting next year in 2026. And when you look at Culture and Entertainment District, we've announced with partners 3 hotel projects, and I'm going to let Tony, I know Tony loves public speaking, so he's going to take a long time really describing all the nuances of those projects, and I can't wait for him to entertain us. But those are really exciting, and construction start on one of them, the Autograph Hotel, in early 2026. And then we talk about transit-oriented communities, and this might be confusing as everyone loves acronyms when you get into your profession, but we've got transit-oriented development, TOD, or TOC, transit-oriented communities. We've landed on the TOC because we believe that it's actually really important to create community. We've learned that in East Village and the Culture and Entertainment District, but working with exploring what those sites can avail and what's next. So I'm going to briefly touch on what's happened in East Village, the Culture and Entertainment District, and what's next for TOCs. So what has the impact been in East Village? We're sitting in East Village right now. We've attracted over 4,000 new residents. It is the 49 acres. We have invested about $400 million in this area, which is a big figure and nothing inconsequential. But the bigger number that's more important, I think, is the attraction of $3 billion of planned private development. Again, what's our role? We had to raise the roads. We had to clean up the contamination. We had to do some heritage buildings. We had to create a place that was easy for people to build in, create a vision that people could buy into, that people wanted to live in as well. And I am an architect, as Claire said, and I get distracted by, beautiful things, but once a project is done is not when we're done a project. It's also the beginning of when we activate a project. So everything from, yes, we needed a public washroom, but let's put it with a pickleball court, to an old gas station that turned into a basketball court, or the lovely old mattress factory of the Simmons building. How could you renovate that and really activate a new rooftop patio? And then who gets to ever work on a 31-acre island in the middle of the Bow River? Pretty exceptional opportunities that we've been afforded. I love the before and afters. I think everyone likes before and afters, but this is the before. I'd say around 2013, 2012 in this one, and I always look at the Simmons building for reference, and for those Calgarians, and I know there's many of you, I like looking at that. So look at the difference, all of the infrastructure work around there. This is before any private developers coming and building homes. We had to lay the groundwork with a strong master plan and then come in and pull the vision to life. So here we are in 2025 and all the additional pieces since that time in about 2012. So a really active 15 years of construction and development happening in the district. One of the first most consequential pieces was really the Riverwalk, which was a conduit of bringing people into the district and having them see what the potential was. And then I've just highlighted the slides of the 6 projects, the multi-unit, multifamily developments. 2 are not seen because they're hidden behind the development just east of the library here. And we'll be moving forward in 2026. So exciting opportunities still to come. So in the Culture and Entertainment District, which is a huge district, 286 acres of space, and a big public investment in the area. We've been able to, obviously, the convention center is the most notable kind of visual vertical investment, but I would argue that some of the infrastructure in and around it was really challenging and important to be able to unlock the potential. And with the announcement of the Truman hotels coming forward and the residents at build-out, this is an area that is really interesting for those who live in Calgary to know that area and stand on a corner 3 years ago and know that area 3 years from now. The change will be exponential from what we see to what we saw before to what we're going to see. And I think it's kind of, this image for me is really telling because you see the big blue box, and that's the convention center addition. We were told, Calgary CMC said, let's make sure that this is the biggest convention center in Western Canada. So we made sure we understood how big Vancouver was, and we were just a little bit bigger. Very Alberta mindset, and we did it. And that was a hugely challenging project, but all of the kind of the infrastructure in and around it was really required. You can't city building isn't done by islands unto itself. You really have to connect the pieces together. So you can see the scale of the projects. We've got the event center up there that's starting to come out of the ground. The steel is looking amazing on that one. And then you can see the infrastructure with the new LRT Stampede Station rebuild. And kudos to the Calgary Transit and to the CMLC team and Calgary Stampede team for pulling that one together. Very challenging moving parts, pun intended. But that little pickleball, okay, we like courts a lot. We like playing sports outside, and we're a very competitive bunch at CMLC. But there's a reasoning behind why we would do little activations. City building on the scale of the projects you see, the big 3 projects, they take years. They're long, arduous, collaborative, complicated, challenging, and aging. They all make you age in rapid speed. But we also need to show Calgarians what's coming, what's the future going to look like. And yes, there is something afoot here. There's something small. And so even just putting in a dog park with a pickleball court and some Tesla chargers, it just signals that something can happen quickly, and it's important in city building. Tony has a long thesis on this one, so he's going to talk about the Autograph Hotel, but really exciting new hotel project for Calgary. I've seen some images of the inside. I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about what it means for the district. Because again, back to that 3 years ago to 3 years from now, when we stand on that street corner, the feel for visitors to our city and Calgarians going to this as a destination will be completely different. So a 333-room hotel that's a game changer. Speaking of game changers, because our development partners don't sit around, it seems like, to do any sort of sitting around, the W and JW Marriott projects that are underway, and I will let Tony and Dave speak to that, but you can see what a difference that is in our skyline and what that could mean to a culture and entertainment district. And now just to summarize, where does CMLC look now, in addition to the Workland Center and Olympic Plaza, which is moving along really quickly and looks great, is how do we bring what we've learned from all those slides I just talked about into transit-oriented communities? How can we start helping Reid and the City of Calgary solve some of the housing questions that are out there? How do we use this city-owned land to provide housing? How can we create a community? So over the red line, CMLC has 8 sites that we're looking at, probably totaling about 120 acres. But our key, similar to what we've done here and I talked about, is unlocking development potential. How do we work with the city to remove barriers, to enable development, to create communities? That's really what we did in East Village, but understanding each site is very different, and trying to leverage what we have in those different sites to create a site-specific solution. So we're looking at a portfolio approach, making sure that we're bringing 3 forward to start, understanding the complexities of development, making sure that we can listen to communities, understand what is special about each community, what is a challenge about each community, same as what we did here in the Rivers District. And making sure that we can really look to it and having a strong master plan, a strong plan that will take time. Markets change. One master plan, even in East Village, the master plan that was created isn't exactly what we have delivered yet. This was supposed to be potentially a university site, a university building where the library is today. But one would argue it is a gateway project. It has activated a very challenging site, so it meets the spirit and the intent baked into the master plan. So Reid already talked about these, the Dalhousie Station being one of them. There's already some private development that has happened adjacent to the site, but understanding the complexities of this site and what could happen on this about 12-acre site. At Fish Creek Lacombe, one of the things that we're looking for, and all of these sites have in a different way, is what are the nearby amenities? What's already there? And I would argue that you can't get much better of an amenity of a green space rather than Fish Creek adjacent to LRT transportation. So a lot on offer in there, and a lot of conversations yet to have. Same thing with Anderson, the local amenity being South Centre Mall and close walking distance to everything that you need. What could that community be? Right now it's a parking lot. What could it be? And so working with our communities, our new established area communities, what could happen in those areas? Making sure that we hit our principles. I always kind of joke about planning principles. They're really important, but they all kind of say the same thing. We need to create great communities. They need to be enable connectivity. I don't think I've ever seen a plan that says make it less connected, make it less economically viable. We need to make sure that we understand all the guiding principles and deliver affordability, deliver housing, and make sure we're looking at city-owned lands in a different lens and what we could create together. So that's what I have to say about CMLC and what we're working on. I look forward to the panel. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Kate. So to get us started with the panel discussion, I'm very pleased to welcome our panel moderator, who is one of my colleagues at CMLC. Nathan Flack is our Director of Design. Nathan joined our team in 2024, following more than 15 years in the industry as an urban designer, architect, and principal of an interdisciplinary team in firms both in British Columbia and Ontario. He's been a trusted advisor to many of Canada's leading universities, colleges, and institute real estate investment companies and private development firms on land development, urban design, land use, and architecture. He brings his broad experience to the CMLC team in developing innovative design solutions for individual sites, communities, campuses, waterfronts, and urban areas. He's fresh off the plane from a trip to Japan, so we appreciate that he's here, although a bit jet-lagged. And I'm pleased to welcome Nathan to the stage and to introduce our panel.
Thank you, Claire. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today among our industry colleagues and peers as the moderator for this esteemed panel. So in addition to Kate and Reid, I'd like to introduce two of our very valued partners in community building. First, Tony Trutina is Chief Operating Officer at Truman. Truman is a leading Calgary-based family-owned developer and builder with a legacy of over 40 years in shaping the city's residential, commercial, and mixed-use landscape. Known for its commitment to quality and community-focused design, Truman has delivered thousands of homes and over 2 million square feet of retail, office, and industrial space throughout the Calgary metropolitan area. As Truman's COO, Tony plays a central role in driving Truman's strategic growth and overseeing its diverse portfolio of residential and commercial developments. Under his leadership, Truman continues to expand its impact on Calgary's urban evolution, most notably through a landmark development to bring not one, not two, but 3 Marriott International hotels, the W, the JW Marriott, and the Autograph Collection to the city's emerging culture and entertainment district. Also joining us today is David White. He's the principal and founder of CivicWorks. Under his leadership, the CivicWorks studio has established a reputation for design integrity and great city building across a range of development typologies and scales of planning practice. His work is centered on leading multidisciplinary teams through complex projects, negotiating community, political, and regulatory processes to achieve celebrated outcomes for a variety of land use and development scenarios. Dave also serves on the board of directors of Liberty Housing Organization, a Calgary-based non-market housing provider. Liberty's housing delivery streams include affordable home ownership and affordable rental homes. So please join me in welcoming all 4 panelists to the stage. To start us off, I'm going to go straight to Tony. Oh, geez. Because you're just itching to go. So Reid talked about demand and housing supply in the city. Private developers play a huge role in delivering housing units to satisfy the demand. Can you tell us a little bit about various projects that you have in the pipeline right now that Truman has, and considering you're what I would consider a large volume home builder for the Calgary market, can you talk a little bit about any barriers that you've seen in delivering and creating that new housing in Calgary?
Sure. Thank you for having me this evening. Great presentations, both of you. I won't go into specific projects. There's too many to mention. We've over 26 active multifamily projects in the City of Calgary, representing roughly 1,800 doors. And currently at various stages of entitlement or approval at the City of Calgary and various surrounding municipalities is another 4,200 doors. So very active in the Calgary market. We love the city and we're very bullish on it, born and raised here, and will continue to be so. In terms of challenges, I think it's more so about kind of broad macroeconomic challenges that are the biggest impact. The most common and prevalent theme among all those projects is simply cost. We're seeing costs anywhere from 100 to 200% from even a year or two ago. When you start talking about more complicated and complex projects, it makes it even more untenable and challenging to get those out of the ground. And the other overarching theme would be time. Time to be able to get to the market, time to get the entitlements, time to get the approval. That's a really, really, really big deal, especially when it comes to the more complicated projects. The longer it takes to put something forth and to get in the ground, it only becomes more and more challenging. For example, projects penciled today might not get into the ground ever, whereas 2 years ago or 3, they may have already been completed. So those are kind of the main overarching themes.
Excellent. Thanks, Tony. David, you've met Tony before.
I have once or twice.
You may have worked on a few projects together. And I know with CivicWorks, you've worked on lots of development projects in Calgary, a variety of community contexts. Watching the progression of a lot of these projects, personally watching your work and seeing a lot of the dialogue happening, I think we're starting to hear a lot of progressive thought about how development and housing creation can really constructively build on existing communities and in new communities. And so they can deliver new amenities and all kinds of things that lead to new social capital, and great things can happen. So we're hearing that, and I'm curious from a planner's perspective, as the city building industry looks to meet this growing demand that we keep hearing about, what influences are you seeing in the design and planning, both in established and new communities? How is it different than what we saw 5 to 10 years ago? Because we all know it's very different. What's on the horizon and what are you dealing with right now?
Thanks for the question. There's a lot there. I think that the last 5 or 10 years, if that was the time frame, the conversation about city building has really changed in our practice, at least, which is primarily centered on redeveloping communities. So your inner city, couple of rings. It's the complex stuff. It's the stuff that isn't as straightforward as some of the developing greenfields or the greenfield developments. And I think there's a lot of important work that has been done that's being led by the city in terms of kind of translating a lot of dated local policy plans to be synced up and modernized with some of the higher order plans like the Municipal Development Plan, Calgary Transportation Plan, and I think that work has been important to changing the conversation from a kind of a community by community, individual plan kind of lens to 8 or 10 communities at a time, talking about some of the important things in those presentations about looking at the kind of the bigger infrastructure, the bigger kind of mobility and land use considerations. The kind of on the kind of the application or the site level, I think that there have been some really good outcomes that have translated into some city building that you can see on the ground today. But in the last 5 or 10 years, I think it's really important to recognize I think the pressures that were emphasized in Reid's presentation about why is the housing strategy so important. I think the pressures related to growth have been acutely felt by a pretty broad range of stakeholders. I mean, CivicWorks finds itself in conversations about the delivery of services and amenities that are essential, about housing supply and affordability, about livability considerations related to safety and other things at the intersection of growth and change applications. The City of Calgary, of course, experiences the same thing when it's talking about medium and long range planning. But I don't think we want to understate how important and different those conversations are when communities are stressed or feeling anxious. There was discussion about life cycles and community and demographics. I think there's a drive to get access to housing in really desirable, connected places in our city that ultimately, when the housing options or supply isn't there, means affordability and change dynamics that can make some folks that are thinking a little bit more protectionist about the status quo really uncomfortable. And that's a cocktail for some pretty intense conversations. I think we're just need to face facts that urban planning is not something that is in the short term. It takes patience and it takes a medium long-term lens. And I think we're living in a slightly more polarized time than we have in a very long while. And I think it's the communication and understanding the complexity of the pressures that community actors are experiencing that really needs to be a considered part of growth and change, no matter which actor you are in the system. And I'll just add one last thing, because there's lots to say about this, but I think that the with density must come amenity piece is the plank in community building, in creating place. If you can't demonstrate that is top of mind in the planning work that you're doing, and that there's a clear line of sight between the change and what's in it for me, and all of the things that I mentioned that folks feel pressure on, I think it's going to be difficult to have that conversation about change.
Kate, the idea of amenity and long-term projections. CMLC has been working for 20 years in the East Village, and we know that market pressures and what residents are looking for is constantly changing. So how has CMLC adapted in terms of revisiting their master plan and thinking about what development happens, but also on the amenity and programming side? There never would have been a pickleball court 15 years ago.
Was there even pickleball?
I don't even know.
No, totally. And I think that's a sign of good planning and a good development is absolutely people want to know where they're living. So they want to know kind of what's Tony building for them or what are developers building for them. But what are Reid and Kate and others, what's around it? And one thing I would say too is retail has completely changed from the time that we did the master plan, 2009 to now. That it's not the same landscape. So thinking that activation will be for sure a coffee shop on the main floor, that's evolved. You can only have so many coffee shops. You need to be creative. You need to figure out what it is, and also understand the demographic of the people living who want to live in your community. Is it rec centers? Is it schools? What is it that draws people? Who are the people that are going to come to every community, and what could it be? So I think in East Village, what has been done is that we have a really great plan. It was authored, 2009 to 2025. Well, the world has really changed. But I would say we've never updated the plan, and that's because the plan was solid enough to withstand various changes. We've gone through 2008 economic crisis, the 2014, 2020, so there's been a few things that have shifted what the market could build, but the plan itself is connected. It's about public space, activity space for families and the like, and making sure that it's interesting, filled with public art, all the rest. So the fundamentals of the plan are strong enough to withstand a lot of change, and I think that's kind of how CMLC's approached master planning that spans decades.
And Reid, talking about attractiveness and people coming and developers coming and the kind of evolution of the Calgary landscape, I'm sure you look at other cities and other trends. Are you seeing anything in other markets that we might start expecting to see coming to Calgary that we either haven't seen or they are just on the cusp of seeing now?
I think what we pride ourselves on is those conversations, right? You're talking with other municipalities, you're talking with other orders of government, whether it be provincial or federal. We just had the AB Munis conference here last week, which was a great opportunity to talk to all the stakeholders in big towns, rural towns, and everything in between to kind of exchange ideas. I would say we are slightly hesitant when it comes to other municipalities for the main reason that, as Kate touched on in her presentation, as much as I talked about 5.5 to 1, Vancouver, Toronto, those are double digits. Those are 10 or 11 to 1 with a lower median income. Right, Calgary has still one of, or I believe, the highest median income of any major Canadian city. And so we have conversations, we try and take little learnings here or there, but we all operate in really different environments. We're creatures of the province. We all have different municipal government act in the case of Alberta. And so we try and figure out what we can see and learn. I think overall, we see the market softening across Canada. We see that demand pulling back a bit, I think both from immigration pressures, from cost pressures that Tony was touching on at the start. And that's okay. Things are cyclical and will go up and down. And what we focus on is, I use the term a lot, crowding in. So we focus on wanting to say this is kind of what capitalism would allow for. And how can we maybe supercharge that? How can we enable above that line? Whether it's grant programs, being very nimble in our processes, having very quick permitting timelines relative, in the City of Calgary, for those who may not be in the space, you can get a same-day foundation permit on a single-family home. Like, you can send us it and then be digging a basement that day, right? That's a process that doesn't exist across Canada. And so it's things like that that allow to say, where am I going to put my capital? Oh, let's put it in Calgary because I can turn it over quicker. I can work with those people. They're really great to work with. We enjoy our experiences. And so we listen and we learn, but we also want to continue to be a leader in this space, which means talking to a lot of people, coming up with a lot of good ideas, and trying to push that envelope forward.
Tony and Dave, I'll ask you kind of collectively. I know involvement in West District has been, you're 10 years into a build-out that, similar to East Village, has a master plan that I'm sure is constantly evolving. I'm curious, in terms of looking at the city's edges, or what was the edge of the city and is no longer, and looking at different housing types and densities, how does your approach there differ over the past 10 years, and how does it differ from your approach to so many inner city sites and the sites that you're seeing in established communities?
I'm happy to kick it off because we just have to have a placemaker event just about West District, if that's possible. It does own a Truman's master plan neighborhood on the west side. If you're not familiar, owns a little piece of CivicWorks soul, all in a good way. Yeah, we've been at this supporting Truman, a huge team for well over a dozen years. When Truman first assembled, I remember that it was a really competitive process among some big players.
What's one of the questions? Who's going to give their soul?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it definitely got a bit of mine. And there's so much history about it, but there was this really interesting large assembly that got put together, and it represents the majority of, like, let's just call it about 100-acre pocket on the west side. So specifically community of West Springs and kind of Cougar Ridge hyphenated. And it was this really unique opportunity. It hadn't developed out to an urban standard. It was country residential parcels, 5 and 10 acres at a time, that had been annexed by Rocky View County. So this was this opportunity, and Truman was successful in pulling it together, and they took a really hard, sober look at, what is the potential of this land. It's worth a fortune. It's unique. They're not making much more land on the west side. It's a high income, interesting demographic, a very desirable place in the city to live. It's in the kind of the east-west skinny middle of the city. It's not the far reaches of the north or south. And what was early 2000s planning, it said, 300 or 400 homes in a context of a pretty frighteningly low density part of the city. And I say that with a lot of respect to really amazing communities, which we've had a long conversation over a decade with. That's, it's pretty unmixed and it's pretty autocentric. And Truman said, we're going to do something different. And it was radically different. And Reid touched on infrastructure, and the interesting thing about, the discovery about what is the highest and best opportunity if we really looked at something ambitious, there was a tremendous amount of oversized pipe and mobility infrastructure capacity and some stuff that was on the way back then. Stoney wasn't built and it was coming. And we said, we can kind of go bonkers here as long as we can sync it up with, the city's own planning processes. And so the ingredients out there is nothing fancy. It's just the fundamental stuff. Kate touched on it, and she's right. Like connected, right? We introduced a grid that was missing because there's a bunch of loops and lollipops in the area because it developed 5 or 10 acres at a time. Higher densities that were transit supportive, that supported all the connectivity to what was opening there with the 69th Street LRT station. So we talked a lot and thought a lot about transit. Thinking about scales of buildings that just didn't exist out there, but doing it in a thoughtful way. And then big moves. Most folks are driving to strip malls to do their shopping, box stores, no problem. But we offered something completely different in the vision, which was basically we like to boast as Calgary's 25th Main Street, right? Walkable, pedestrian-oriented activity street. It's in photos. I think it's one of the best cross sections out there, and there's a lot of competing good ones, but it's really only akin to a few piers. And there's places like, University District and some of the other stuff that's envisioned in a few other kind of master plan nodes. The other big move was what just opened this year, Radio Park. And this isn't just a central park space. I mean, Truman went wild. Innovation, level of investment, negotiated custom agreements that were unprecedented and took multiple years, never used special endowment agreements for a park space that they knew wasn't just about placemaking, but I mean, there was a bottom line factor to it. We talked about this a lot, that you knew that this would drive sales for what we'll build out is 4,500 doors. And I get passionate about it, but Tony can talk about the other
Tell us more.
Dave was unaware that it was a shared answer question.
No, Dave did great. No, it's all good.
But
West District, bonkers.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway.
But
That's
I'll say
actually the
that
slogan,
one of the things that's really important about it is also thinking about those things that are missing, those essential services and amenities. And Tony in particular amongst the executive has been a huge advocate for exploring how to get community recreation amenities and other kind of synergies like branch library into West District. And they've been, investing, leading the charge with a lot of uncertainty and risk about how to land that as a next activator for, we're 10 years into build out and 10 years more coming. And, this is going to be one of the highest density individual nodes in the whole of the city when it's all rounded out. And obviously I get really excited about West District. So sorry if it wasn't much of a shared answer, Tony.
You got it covered, my friend. You're good.
Okay, I have a question for Tony because I do want to hear what he has to say about West. Sorry, David. But what did you learn as kind of leading that, as we're all embarking on, and other people are embarking on different developments? Like, you have tons of lessons learned, but what's the one takeaway you're like, woo, doing something bonkers means what?
The biggest lesson is things change faster than you think. And real estate, even though it's not really a dynamic, fast-moving, fluid investment, it's something that you really have to keep the pulse on what you're doing, what you're proposing, what you're putting to the market. It's not as easy, as you guys can appreciate, right? Throwing in 100,000 square foot fitness facility in a community and trying to find all the levels of government that are required to facilitate that, and try to find capital investment that's willing to park $100 million or whatever the number may be into a public good or a public asset is very far and few between. So that's how.
Oh, that's good.
That's great. Thanks for saving that, Kate. I apologize.
I want to explore a little bit about kind of new endeavors, including TOCs for CMLC. And Reid, you talked a lot about how we integrate market, non-market housing, how the public reacts, how existing communities react when we move into new communities. So maybe I'll start with Kate. When we start thinking about TOCs, how does CMLC's approach and lessons learned from East Village come into a new context which might be quite foreign to Calgary? Because the idea of creating density at TOC sites, some might understand, some might not really get what that means. So how does CMLC approach that?
Well, I think it's a good question. I think, first of all, we're sitting in a TOC. So this is, we've got just over our shoulders is the City Hall station, and this is a transit-oriented community, as is the Culture and Entertainment District. But I think the thing we've learned about, yes, it's new to Calgary. A lot is new to Calgary, though. We're really, really young as a city in comparison to other large cities in Canada, and if not in the world. So that's not going to change. But I think from CMLC's perspective, though, when I showed that image of the big red outline of the Rivers District, and we have the 49 acres of East Village and the Culture and Entertainment District, those are adjacent neighborhoods. But we didn't approach them in the exact same way. We took lessons from one, which is, how to be connected, how to listen to what the community needs and wants. But the needs and wants south of CPKC's line are very different than the needs and wants in East Village. And so we had to understand them. First of all, we had to learn, and then we had to respond and continue to evolve. It's not just a set it and forget it. If you think that you can build a community and just be like, this is the vision, and then go and build it, what Tony and Dave were talking about, then you're going to be completely unsuccessful. And I don't think for anyone, I think the goal is success, which is creating a great community. So it's not just building the community, it's creating a lasting community that responds to its context.
And Reid, how do you deal with this idea that there will be community, maybe misunderstanding or opposition to changes, and in the context of TOCs and growth everywhere in the city?
Yeah, I think, change just as a human condition is just difficult, right? It's really difficult to deal with. And I think the sooner we can all start to have honest conversations with ourselves that you were change, I was change, and there will be change after you, right? It's understanding that neighborhoods are fluid and dynamic, and that's what makes them amazing places to be. They are not set it and forget it, stop everything and freeze it all in time. Having said that, we want to make sure we're interacting with the communities in a way that they understand. We want to make sure we're balancing perspectives. I like to use a lot of personal examples, as you maybe saw from my presentation, but to build on that, the community I live in, I happened to work at as my first land development job. I was an on-site consultant rep for Stantec, and I was doing phase 10 and phase 11 and phase 12 and so on and so forth. And you fast forward 7 years, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, that's where we bought our house. Now, if you think of it in terms of, when I was there doing phase 10, 11, 12, it was probably at area structure plan and land use and all those things half a dozen years before then. Where was my voice at the public hearing 14, 15, 16 years in advance of me buying? Of course, it wasn't there. I had no clue. Right? And so that's an important piece we also want to bring in, is making sure we're identifying both the voices that are in the room today, but also the voices that can't represent themselves, either because they have a job, they have 2 jobs, they have family demands, or they live in Toronto. They're not coming to the public hearing that happened 4 years before they arrive here, right? And that's where I exist, that's where my office exists, is to be an advocate for those people who are unable to advocate for themselves.
I can't believe you didn't incorporate the change in your own life with a new baby a week ago. That's huge.
I got sent a video. I have a baby that's 11 days old,
Yeah.
and I got sent a picture by my wife, and it says he's not in tummy time right now. So that's the home update.
So you're advocating for him.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly, advocating for
There you
him.
go. I love it. Congratulations.
Dave, I want to dig a little bit into non-market for a moment. And can you talk a little bit about Liberty Housing Organization? Because if you can get out your crystal ball and tell us all what's on the horizon for delivery of non-market housing, it's a piece that comes into every conversation about development, about density, about building new community. What does the sector in Calgary need in order to be successful?
Great question. I think it's for an organization like Liberty, who has been around for about 10 years, focused on primarily the affordable home ownership program, but in recent years has had success through city programs, the non-market land sale disposition program, to access affordable land and funding opportunities to develop purpose-built rental. I think it's a really important and future is bright time for a big part of the ecosystem, at least locally. And that's what I'll refer to. And Reid's got knowledge that'll extend beyond. But I think that not everyone in the non-market housing ecosystem are the same, with the same mandate, resources, focus. Liberty wants to have an impact related to the delivery of housing. There is a unique synergy with Truman as a dedicated build partner, original kind of seed funder of that program, and they've been the primary source of access to housing related to the affordable home ownership program. But I would say that what is the sector need? Well, I think it needs access to affordable land and funding. And I think that funding and the way it stacks needs to have a relationship to all orders of government. And I think that it's exciting to see there's quite a bit of promise in what the federal government is about to do, a little uncertainty of how it all kind of interrelates, whether that be the...
Does anybody know if the budget passed?
Yeah, did it?
Okay, there we go. Then keep going.
We know a certain notice of motion passed.
It could be a big different world. That's a strategy, change, all that stuff.
Okay. Good for that budget. Yeah, that budget. I think that budget will be important. I think affordability and housing supply is at the top of most governments' agendas. They're taking a different approach to it for different tools that they have in the toolbox. But so the non-market land sale program. Bespoke programs that are funded dependent, like the one that Reid highlighted related to the half funding. The opportunities coming with CMLC stewardship of TOC lands and the opportunity and priority for non-market housing to be delivered, it's going to be critically important. I'd also say, and kind of one shout out from a Liberty Lens perspective, we really do think there's a lot of promise in mixed market housing, bona fide mixed market housing. Whether that market housing is being delivered by the not-for-profit to balance the sustainability equation and affordability for the non-market, or if it's actually a private home builder in the market sector that's looking to partner, whether that be a horizontal or vertical play or some other type. That right now there's a lot of barriers. I think other jurisdictions are further ahead. And it's more nuanced than this panel talk, but I really think mixed market, if we are going to hit the goals of the housing strategy in terms of housing delivery, especially in the non-market space, we got to scale. I think we have to look at innovation, and I think there's a lot there. And I think the housing strategy, has planks that speak to it. So there's a lot. Keep going with the housing strategy. Unrelenting commitment, council, please.
Are you coming to budget next week?
I guess.
And if I can add too, I think you're being a little bit too humble, like in the sense that I do want to give a specific shout out to those market or historically market providers like Truman, right, who have taken a leap into this space. It's a different clientele. It's a whole different capital stack. It's a whole different funding world. There's all these caveats on title. It's not the smoothest thing in the world. And I acknowledge that. But what we're trying to do is do exactly this, which is bring an expert from the private market and have them deliver non-market unit housing supply. Like, one thing we often gets mixed up is when we talk non-market, generally speaking, like a lot of Liberty's projects are 20% below market. They're 30% below market. They're not, in today's world, that's $1,500 a month, right? That's a decent sized housing bill. These are people with families. These are people with well-paying jobs that are just struggling to afford housing. And these buildings are beautiful. Like, I encourage those who haven't driven by, say, a Liberty project, the one going up in Parkdale, the Arch.
Village block.
Like the Arch, and Borough block in Haysboro.
We like blocks at Liberty.
Yeah. And then, I can see his grayed out silhouette here as he shakes his head at me, but Mr. Hindle of Hindle Architect fame, on 1010 6th Ave. These beautiful structures that are fully perpetual, affordable, non-market units. It is so important that we have partners like yourselves that are willing to work with us on these very tricky, dynamic projects.
Yeah, and that they don't look different or less than. It's really critical and hard to do.
Well, Tony knows this. The Village Block project in Parkdale is, I think it's going to be an arm and a leg from building performance and to accessibility to the quality of a number of other set pieces in that project. It is it's going to outperform market housing, which is not always going to be the case, nor should it be in the kind of the whole spectrum. But that's what the city expects if the disposition of affordable land and with funding obligations, you need to meet and exceed in many ways.
So we're almost at time, and Tony, we're not letting you get out of here without asking
it's
you.
It's flashing red. No, I'm kidding.
It is flashing. About hotels, because we're all really curious. So you don't go small. You don't deliver one hotel or two or three. Can you tell us about the evolution of moving into that market? What's been kind of learned at Truman? What are you looking at right now, and what's on the horizon for you in terms of hotel?
Yeah, over the last couple of years, our family's taken an interest in the hospitality real estate segment of the city. And we took a lot of time and due diligence engaging a lot of key industry performers or actors that are currently in the city operating, like Marriott, and trying to really understand what the gaps were in the market and how we could help. And not only fill that demand and complement the investments that the City of Calgary has made and other various stakeholders, whether it be at the BMO or the LRT lines, but primarily the focus is to try and change the conversation about the city. It's to really make it Calgary. And the best way for me to describe this is kind of through a story. We engaged, I would say, too many consultants on the hotel projects. And one of the most renowned ones is from Barcelona. And she's been to Calgary 21 times. And so we get talking, and this was just last week. I was unaware that 21 was the number, and I asked her, where she stayed, and it was disheartening, but also a way to look at it as an opportunity. She noted that she stayed in Calgary only one time out of the 21 times that she's been in Calgary, and the rest of the time it's like a hub, and they go to Lake Louise, or they go to Canmore, and they go to Banff. And that's the conversation that we're really trying to change here with our hotel investments, is really kind of push the city forward and kind of level up our stature, just in terms of tourists, not just leisure tourism and convention business, but just truly be an international city, and having luxury hotels and more than one is part of that conversation. So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
So I know we're going to get to some audience questions, Claire and Emma. I'm going to ask one final question, and this is for a 5-second answer from each of the panelists.
David?
It's not going to happen. We know.
You're getting
Sure,
called out by
I'm sure.
Reid. You've got.
I would like to know what you're most excited about on the horizon for 2026 in terms of community building and housing in Calgary. Luck of the draw. Reid.
Me? I think it's the opportunity with new federal government and this new municipal government to take on this challenge head on.
Fantastic. Kate?
New solutions. There's new people in our city. Maybe there's new solutions that come from that, and I'm excited about what those might be.
I'd say outside of the hotels, non-market housing opportunities, and how we can streamline that to get some more affordable housing onto the books.
I don't have a great answer, but to be short, I'd just say I think if we're going to develop more intensely in and around our transit infrastructure, well, let's just get on with it and let's really focus on that, because we've struggled and there's a lot of reasons why. And so it's awesome to see the city and council and CMLC taking a big part of that portfolio. Let's rock it. Like, I think it's a really important time to take advantage of linking land use and mobility on those key assets.
Excellent. Claire and Emma, I think we have some audience questions.
We do. Thank you so much for everyone who submitted questions. We have time we're going to try and do 2 whole questions. The first one is for Kate and Tony. Can you share the programming implementation that you feel differentiates the lifestyle outcomes seen in West District and East Village?
Well, you got to go first.
No, I did this.
I think it's amenitizing the community. We treat Radio Park that just opened up. Come visit; it's amazing. We treat that as the living room for the community, flanked by a mustache building in honor of my old man's legendary mustache.
It's a landform building with a green roof.
It's a mustache building.
Trying to create more of a sense of community through architecture and design and thoughtful, creating places, not just building buildings and parks. There has to be more to it. I think that's the best way I could put it.
Thanks, Tony. Kate?
We have an embarrassment of anchor buildings in East Village, this being one of them, National Music Center, and then the other embarrassment that we have is access to natural spaces, like the 31-acre island in the middle of the Bow River. That's a destination. It's become a loop. Get a coffee, grab an ice cream, take your kids, dip your toes in the water, and then just river walk. So I think the complement of those 2 amenities, they'll start to build community.
Thank you. And Reid, you had to know this one was coming. You brought it up in your presentation, and it's our number 1 question today. So if the new city council moves forward to repeal the citywide rezoning, how do you expect Calgary's housing market and investment landscape to change?
Are you shocked?
Shocked. I am making light of it, but it's obviously an immensely important conversation. I would say this. I want to put it in context for those that don't read every single administrative briefing that goes to council. I do not blame you.
Nobody does.
Reid does.
Yeah, there's somebody. But the newest one is actually coming on December 3rd, and it'll be released to the public, so you'll see it then. But using numbers from the last one, which came in September, is that rezoning for housing enabled 3,500 units since it was implemented in August of last year. So you may remember that chart that had us at about 22 and a bit thousand units as of end of September. So end of this calendar year, we'll be north of 25,000 units that have taken occupancy, been completed in the City of Calgary. Rezoning for housing represents, again, in about a calendar year, 3,500 units. So if there's adaptations to it, if there's changes to it, there will certainly be an impact. But is it all of the development we're seeing? Is it all of the growth we're seeing? Surely, no, it's not. Our council, obviously, is well within their right to amend the land use bylaw as they see fit. And we, as administration, are here to work with them through that process, hand in hand, ensuring that they have the information they need to make the decision that they, as the elected officials, believe is correct. And going back to the strategy, it's 98 action items. Rezoning for housing is one of them. So myself, as the Chief Housing Officer, I will be speaking up, and you'll see me doing that and advocating that it's a good policy that should stay. But it's important to separate that roles. I exist as an advocate, and there's other people at the city that are the pure development authority and are there to ensure bylaws and policies get approved as they should to the will of council. And so it's complicated, but we look forward as administration to working with this new council, figuring out what it looks like, and engaging with the community again around what exactly those changes will become.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening and good night.